Now on this third line, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and practice writing a variety of different intervals. And then what we'll do is we'll also go ahead and identify, for example, the letters and then the lines and the spaces, okay? Now, one of the things that you always want to keep in mind is that the lines and spaces specifically pertain to only the notes that are on the staff or in the staff, right? So like if I had a note here or a note here, although these guys are space notes, we wouldn't count them within our number because they aren't within the staff. Same thing with like middle C, right? Middle C is off of the staff, so we don't count that necessarily as one of the 5 lines of the staff. Now, we're going to go ahead and be in the treble clef. Let's go ahead and draw ourselves a treble clef. So again, this will be on the third line of your staff paper that I would do. And so again, treble clef starts on the second line, okay? Then we curve up to the third line, the middle line, and we go down to the bottom line, curve down to the bottom line, which is the first line. Then we curve up and over to the right slightly, okay? And that's for us to turn back to the left and then straight down through, and then of course a little twirl at the end to finish it off, okay? Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna practice drawing specifically intervals and get really, really used to drawing intervals. That's gonna be our goal for today. And so when we're going through and we're drawing intervals, we're going to start on the first line, okay? Now, this first line here, for the treble clef, I'm going to just go ahead and go through these notes very, very quickly. For the treble clef, the line notes are E, G, B, D, and F. Now, what you'll notice is, and this is a pattern that I want you to notice and realize, is the fact that for the bass clef actually just starts on G, and it goes through the same pattern. And of course, it continues up until A. So if you ever forget one or the other, just know that like they're the same pattern of notes practically. They actually are just like one letter off usually in that pattern, which is kind of interesting. But these are the line notes for the treble clef, E being the first one, and then 2, 3, 4, and then 5. In terms of the space notes, we specifically have FACE. And those are nice because it spells the word face. It's easy to kind of remember it that way. For the mnemonic device, for EGBDF, oftentimes we usually say every good boy either does fine or deserves fudge. It's one of the two. Again, mnemonic devices will be different depending on where you are within the United States. But let's go ahead and start with the E. And what we're going to go ahead and practice is we're going to go ahead and practice, again, drawing intervals and getting used to these intervals and identifying notes within intervals. So we're going to start by trying to do a fifth above, okay? A fifth above. Now, something that you see here, of course, on my screen, you'll see me. You see, of course, the example of all the notes and things that I'm writing in, and then of course underneath me you see this part that says remember, even number specifically equals a mix, and then odd number equals same. And what that's referring to is the fact that whenever we have an even numbered interval, so a 2, a 4, a 6, or an 8, right? All of those guys will end up being a mix of notes. So one will be a line, one will be a space, always. For the odd numbers, so like the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th, they'll always be the same. So if you have one line, the other one's going to be a line. If you have one space, the other one's going to be a space. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Fifth above. There's a couple of ways to do this, if I'm being quite honest. One way is that if you're really unsure, you could go by the letters, right? Starting on E being 1, F would be 2, G would be 3, A would be 4, and then B would be 5. If you want to go ahead and draw the fifth above, you could draw it one of two ways. You could draw it directly above it so that it's like a chord. You could also just draw it over here. Either one's fine. I'm going to just draw it above so that I have more space. So that's one way of doing it. It's just counting the letters, right? Always intervals are based on the letters, and you always count starting from the first letter that you start on. Now, other ways that you could end up doing this, there are actually a couple of kind of tricks. So based on this idea of odd numbers being the same. So odd numbers are always going to be lines to lines. And again, for our odd numbered options, the only options that we have are thirds, fifths, and sevenths. So a really good trick is that if I go from one line to the next line, so like for example from here to here, that would be a third, okay? That would be a third. If I go from one line and I skip specifically a line in between and I went to here, this would be a fifth. Okay? And then if I ended up going from that and I skipped 2 lines, so 1 line, 2 line in between, skipped over those, this would be a seventh. So that's kind of the nice thing. The third is always going to be the next line up. The fifth is going to be if you skipped over 1, and then the seventh is going to be if you skipped over 2. Okay, so but that's just one way of being able to do that. And it's, again, a very, very nice shortcut to be able to do things. But in this case, so we have a fifth above. I'm going to go ahead and draw that note in again. And again, that note right there, again, if we were going through the lines, E, G, B, this is the middle line, the third line right here, this note is B. And so on your specifically on your staff, what I would like for you to do is that I would like for you to do 2 things for me. The one thing that I want you to have, or actually 3 things that I want written. So one thing that I want you to do is next to the notes that you've written, I want you to draw a bracket, and then I want you to write the number marker 5th, and then specifically what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and write in the notes. So E, and then specifically I almost wrote G, this would be B. Okay, E and B. So, but this specifically right here within this yellow box is what I want you to have written. Everything else isn't really necessary. Okay, what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna do 2 more examples of this. Okay, and then we'll end up moving on from there. For today, we won't focus on doing the 4th line. That will be in a separate video. Now, let's go ahead and let's do a space note this time. So let's go ahead and start on the first space of the treble clef, okay? Now, this note right here, I'll go ahead and give you a second to pause the video and try and figure it out. But once you, of course, unpause, then this note right here is, of course, the first space of the treble clef, which is F, right? The treble clef spaces are face, F-A-C-E. Again, if you can't remember that mnemonic device, it's perfectly fine. Again, just utilize middle C, right? Know that middle C is a line note, so the next note from C would be D that hangs off, then E is on the line, and then F is, of course, right above it. Oftentimes, these notes that are really close to middle C are easy to identify, so long as you, again, utilize middle C, kind of like your North Star to guide you in your travels. But let's say that we were starting on F, and let's go ahead and try and make that 5th again. So I'm going to go ahead and have us make a 5th. Now, what we saw earlier with the 5th was the fact that when we go from a 5th, specifically, each of the notes stay exactly the same. So we'll have, again, a line note to a line note, or a space note to a space note. But if you remember, we had to do something in order to get a 5th, right? Unlike the 3rd, which it's just the next line up, right? We had to skip a line. So similarly, if I were to go ahead and do F and then the next space up, that would end up giving me, this would just be a 3rd right here, okay? So that would be, of course, incorrect. And so what we would have to do is that we would have to go ahead and skip a space, and we would end up here. So this would be a 5th, okay? And again, draw your bracket, 5th, and then go ahead and write those notes. So the notes there are an F and a C. Now, this C, of course, is not middle C. This is treble C. This is the C above middle C, so to the right of middle C. Always be very, very careful about where you find these C's. The C's are really, really important for being landmarks as to where notes end up showing up. But again, middle C would be, of course, down here for the treble clef. So that's that distinction, right, between those 2 C's. But here we have, again, another 5th. Again, we have a space note to a space note, right? F to C. We're going to go ahead and do one last one, and then we'll call it a day. Specifically, we're going to go ahead and start, and we're going to actually go the opposite direction this time. We're going to start on a space note. We're going to start up here, okay? Now, this here is the 1, 2, 3, 4th space on our treble clef, okay? So again, if you ended up wanting to, you could use that F-A-C-E, and then you figure out, okay, so the 4th one is that E. So this is technically E up here. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, and this is a really, really important skill to understand, if you have other notes, and in music you oftentimes do, so like before we, of course, had that C, right? You could always just use the relationship from the note prior to be able to get there, right? If I'm going from C, which is a space note, and I'm going to the very next space, I'm going from the third space to the fourth space, there's only one letter in between, right? If I had a note here in between, this note would be D. So that's how I would get C, D, and then that one, of course, on top would be E. One of the things that you're going to want to be able to do in music, and this is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like the mnemonic devices, is that you are going to want to be able to utilize the relationships from like prior chords to help you out with, future chords. And so that's just something to kind of keep in mind as you're moving forward in your playing. But we have E on top, okay? What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and do something a little bit different this time. We're going to go ahead and go a sixth down, okay? So now, when we're going down and going up doesn't really change anything other than the fact that we're going down the alphabet. Now, one option, of course, is to go down the alphabet and go, okay, starting from E, which is 1, I go D, which is 2, 3 would be C, then 4 notes would be B, then 5 notes would be A, and then 6 notes would be G. Again, you'll notice how that looks really hectic, and then especially whenever you're dealing with a small staff, it's really hard to read. So instead, what you can go ahead and do is that you can go ahead and utilize some of your information that you already do know. Utilize the fifth, understanding of the fifth, and then just go one more after the fifth. So again, with a fifth, if I wanted to go down a fifth, from a space note, I just skip a space and then go down a space. So like this note right here would be a fifth, right? So in order to go a sixth, again, even numbered intervals always have a mix. So we should end up on the line note that's a little bit further. So right here, okay? So oftentimes I like utilizing those odd numbers to be able to get my even numbers. But again, what you can do is that go ahead and draw a bracket. Then you can draw the sixth. And then those notes that are on there are, of course, a G and an E. But that's all we're going to do today for our practice. Hopefully this recording has been a little bit helpful. Again, you can go ahead and practice this kind of thing later on. Like if you wanted to go ahead and use the next line and do the bass clef, and then just give yourself a variety of notes throughout, and then just give yourself a number. Like let's say have you yourself draw a fourth up or a fifth down or something like that, and just test yourself to see how well you can do things, okay? But that's all for today, and I will see you next time.